All right, we're going to do a great series video, and then I intend to hop on the PlayStation and do a little bit of NHL 20. And honestly, I'm kind of looking forward to that being something that we don't really have to worry about anymore. More encouraging news stuff that's going on today, so I'm really kind of happy right now with the way things are going. And in 2014, this was the Stanley Cup Final. I need to do a video at some point on when the actual Stanley Cup Final wasn't the Stanley Cup Finals, where you're watching the finals and you're like, well, I know who's going to win this. And the actual Stanley Cup Finals, it felt like happened before that. And it was with Detroit and Colorado, absolutely. And Chicago and LA, also an absolutely. These guys met. This was just a great series. You notice I filled the board completely. It was tough to find a place to put the numbers at the end, so I have to put them in the middle. 46, 21, and 15 record for the Blackhawks that year. 267 goals, which was first in the NHL. 220 against, which was 13th. Built differently than the Kings. The Kings, 46, 28, and 8. 206 goals for, which was 25th. 174 goals against, which was first. So best offense, best defense. There we go. Going into this series, Chicago had beaten the Blues in 6, and they'd beaten the Wild in 6. The Kings had beaten the Sharks in 7, and they'd beaten the Ducks in 7. So they went through California. Chicago went through some old stomping grounds with St. Louis and Minnesota there. And, of course, the LA Kings would go on and beat the Rangers. But that was in 5. The Stanley Cup Finals is right here. And Game 1, things are interesting right out of the gate. Power play goal in the first for Chicago, Brandon Saad from Leddy and Hossa at 14:46. Second period, Tyler Toffoli ties it from Pearson and Carter. That 70s line was huge during the 2014 run. 4 minutes and 35 seconds, they tied it. Duncan Keith would restore the lead for Chicago from Saad and Kruger at 11:54. Third period, Taves scores from Oduya and Hossa at 16 minutes and 10 seconds. That is your insurance goal. Chicago emerges from Game 1 with a 1-0 series lead. Quick, 17 saves on 20 shots in the loss. Crawford, 25 saves on 26 shots in the victory. So you go to Game 2, and this is one of those crazy games. Now, I've talked about this in recent videos where, it's nice to have a team that'll bail out their goaltender when they're not necessarily having a great night. We see that throughout this series, where both goalies are experiencing some challenges along the way, and their team rallies behind them. Now, in this game, you have no idea that it's going to necessarily be a problem, as the Chicago Blackhawks, who would score first, I'm just looking at the board here, they would score first 5 out of 7 times in this series. They score first period, power play goal, Leddy from Keith at 14:16. So it's 1-0 Chicago, same score would have been after the first period of Game 1. Second period, Ben Smith scores from Bolig and Oduya at 1 minute and 40 seconds. So, rest of the second period, LA's trying to play catch-up, and they get a goal from Justin Williams. Richards and King with the assist at 18:14. I always thought when Dwight King was playing for the Kings that he had to play for them because his last name was King. That was just the assumption I made. Third period, LA storms out. Power play goal by Carter from Doughty and Voinov at 1:37. It's then a power play goal by Muzzin from Martinez and Kopitar at 4:04. Toffoli then makes it a bigger lead with a goal from Pearson and Carter at 8:59. Carter scores from Pearson and Green at 14:44. And then Carter adds the empty netter. He gets the hat trick at 16:29. So Chicago pulls the goalie with a lot of time left because why not? You're behind. You might as well give it a shot. Jonathan Quick, 23 saves on 25 shots in the win. Crawford saved 25 out of 30 in the loss. And, of course, the empty netter is your 6th goal. And, again, Quick starts slow in this, and then they storm through. Game 3, we switch venues. We go to L.A. with the series tied. L.A., they allow the first goal again. It's Jonathan Taves shorthanded at 5:26. But during that same power play, Voinov scores from Carter and Doughty at 6:16. Jonathan Taves, though, restores the lead from Roosevelt and Hossa at 13:19. So it's 2-1 Chicago after the second period, or after the first period. They have the lead after the first for the third game in a row. LA shows they can come back. Carter scores in the second from Pearson at 8:08. That 70s line continues to Foley from Carter and Mitchell at 14:19. And of course, that 70s line referred to the fact that all 3 members of that line had a number that started with a 7 on the back. Or had a 7 on the back. I'm just thinking Pearson was 70, Carter, Toffoli was 73. You guys know what I'm talking about. You guys, Kings fans know what I'm talking about. Third period. Doughty from Muzzin and Williams at 11:57. See, I get caught up. I'm trying to remember who wore which number, and then, yeah, go right off. And then Sharp would make it close from Letty at 19:55, but the Kings win it 4-2. 4-3. What should have been 4-2, but of course. Crawford saves 28 out of 32 in the loss. Quick saves 24 out of 27 in the victory. So we go to Game 4 in LA. And the LA Kings, for the first time in the series, score first. And often. 9 minutes in, it's a power play goal. It's Muzzin scoring from Doughty and Toffoli at 9 minutes. So all 4 of the first 4 games, it's a special teams goal that opens the scoring. It'll be a special teams goal in Game 5 as well. We'll get to that. Gaborik scores from Kopitar at 11 minutes and 13 seconds, and then it's another power play marker. It's Brown from Williams and Muzzin at 15:56. Both of these teams had lethal power plays. Second period, Doughty scores from Kopitar and Williams at 12:43, so it's 4-0. But the Blackhawks have some fight back in them as well. Saad scores from Roosevelt at 14:03. Third period, Bickle scores from Kane and Taves at 9:29. Then an empty netter is added. It's Pearson from Carter at 18 minutes and 58 seconds. The Kings have a 3-1 series lead, and they win this one 5-2. Crawford saves 16 out of 20. Of course, the empty netter makes it 5 goals against on the team. Quick saves 22 out of 24. The biggest difference between the 2014 and 2012 runs is Jonathan Quick. Jonathan Quick was absolutely out of his mind, fantastic in 2012. He was very good in 2014, but he was not at that same level. And the amazing thing is, he didn't need to be. So, we go to Game 5. We're in Chicago. LA allows that first goal, and it's a power play marker, and it's early. Brent Seabrook from Taves and Kane at 1 minute and 13 seconds. Johnny Oduya then scores from Kane and Shaw at 3:40. It's 2-0 Chicago. Jared Stoll would score from King at 9:49, but Chicago restores a 2-goal lead at Saad from Shaw and Kane at 11:06. Gaborik would score about 3 minutes later from Kopitar and Brown, or 2 minutes later, at 13:16. Kopitar and Brown with the assists on that one. It's 3-2 after 1, and heavy scoring first periods would be a thing in Games 5 and 7. There are some definite similarities, but the ending's a little bit different. Second period, Dustin Brown scores from Gaborik at 11:06. Pearson then scores from Carter and Richards at 13:08. And so the LA Kings have a 4-3 lead entering the third period. All they have to do is bring it home. Third period, it's Ben Smith from Saad and Oduya at 1:17. You know, Ben Smith scored some key goals for Chicago along the way. There's some interesting names that come up when I'm looking at these old series. So that ties it up. First period solves nothing. We go into the second overtime, and you got to think, well, I'm glad this isn't in LA because this would be really late. But it's in Chicago. And in the second overtime, Chicago's home ice advantage works to their advantage for sure. Handzus from Saad and Kane at 2:04. Jonathan Quick saves 40 out of 45. Crawford saves 40 out of 44. And we're going to a Game 6. Now LA at home, they can end it. And LA does something they'd only done once in the series to this point. They score first. It's King from Stoll and Williams at 17:06. It's 1-0 Kings after the first. But whoever has the lead after the first hasn't been winning a whole lot in this series. So it doesn't necessarily mean that much. I think it's 3-2 with the lead after. I'm just looking at 1, 2. Yeah, you're 3-2 if you have a lead after the first. It's not that secure. Second period, Chicago shows the insecurity is there and real as it's a power play goal from Kane. Taves and Seabrook with the assists at 1 minute and 12 seconds. Ben Smith, there he is again. He scores from Sharp and Seabrook at 2:49. Third period, the Kings storm back. First, it's Doughty from Brown and Richards at 5:32, and then 2 minutes later, power play goal. Alec Martinez from Doughty at 7:38. Kings have the lead. They're at home. All they have to do is, Keith from Kane and Shaw at 11:34, and then Kane from Saad and Jalmerson at 16:15. So with 3 minutes and 45 seconds left, the Chicago Blackhawks said, let's just finish this in regulation and not go to overtime. Crawford saves 26 out of 29 in the win. Quick saves 21 out of 25 in the loss. So we go to Game 7 in Chicago. Chicago had been down 3-1. This is insane. This is a series that nobody had any idea going to Game 7 what may or may not happen. Nobody had any clue who was going to win. And for me, as a guy who disliked both LA and Chicago pretty much equally at the time, I just wanted to watch good hockey. And I got good hockey out of this. First period, it's Saad from Kane and Shaw at 5:06. It's then a power play goal from Taves, Kane, and Seabrook with the assists at 8:36. It's 2-0 Chicago. They're at home. All right, looks like Chicago's come out to play. LA fights back. Carter from Brown and Toffoli at 16:31, and less than a minute later, it's Williams. This Williams guy's pretty good in Game 7s, right? He scores from Voinov and King at 17:22, but 12 seconds later, Sharp scores from Kruger at 17:34 to make it 3-2 Chicago after the first period. What did I say about first period leads? Don't necessarily translate to the rest of the game. Second period, Toffoli scores from Green and King at 10:31. That ties things at 3. But it's a power play goal that makes it a lead again for Chicago. It's Sharp from Saad at 18:25. And again, it's noteworthy that Brendan Saad had a really good series here. Saad's been a pretty good playoff performer. When they decided to get Saad back in exchange for Panarin, that's part of what I think the vision was, that Saad was a big playoff guy and they weren't sure Panarin would be. And of course, there was the cost certainty thing with Saad as well. So third period, Gaborik from Brown and Kopitar at 12:43 silences the Chicago masses. So instead of going to a Stanley Cup final against the New York Rangers to have a matchup between two original six teams, we're now going to overtime. In the first overtime, LA ends it, and it is Martinez from Williams and Green at 5:47. So Alec Martinez with the biggest goal in LA history when it comes to a Game 7 overtime winner. Quick 37 saves on 41 shots in the victory, and Crawford saved 27 out of 32. Crawford did not have a great series. But again, a lot of these are going to be power play goals, so you can take a look at it and say, well, was it the penalty kill that was the problem, or is your best penalty killer supposed to be your goaltender? So there you go. Kane had 2 goals and 8 assists in this series. Saad had 4 goals and 5 helpers. Taves had 4 goals and 3 assists, and Sharp had 3 goals and 1 assist. So Saad with 9 points in 7 games. Very good series for him. Crawford was 3-4 with an .878 save percentage. This is 6 years ago, and coming out of that series, Crawford kind of reminds me of Chris Osgood, in that he wins a lot of games. He's been there a long time, and he's won championships, but there's that question mark that hits him whenever he has a bad series. And there's that question mark about Chicago goaltending that gets brought up. Carter would have 5 goals and 6 assists to lead the way for the Kings. Doughty, 3 goals, 4 assists. Williams, 2 goals and 5 assists, and big in Game 7 as always. And Tyler Toffoli had 4 goals and 2 assists in this series. Jonathan Quick, 4-3 with a surprisingly low .889 save percentage. That save percentage of .889, not great. .878, not great. Both of these teams were bailing out their goaltenders if they weren't having good, playing particularly well that night. Bailing out defense that wasn't necessarily fantastic either. And this was one of the most exciting series in NHL history in my eyes. I say in my eyes because honestly, my history of watching the game only dates back to 1981. And I wasn't very old in 1981 either. So that's why I always throw in my opinion, in my eyes, and in my time. But this was a great series. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. And a question I have for you guys to close this out is, which series conference finals only would you look back at and say, that's when the Stanley Cup was decided? The finals was nice, but it was actually decided in the conference finals. I'm going to dig through the numbers and the data, and I'm going to definitely do a list of that, sort of power ranking style maybe. But yeah, that could be interesting to look at, when the best series of the playoffs, when the Stanley Cup champion was most challenged throughout the playoffs. And in this case, the Kings faced a massive challenge with the Hawks, and then they went on and beat the Rangers in 5. So there you go. Thank you guys so much for all your support throughout this time. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for everything. I will talk to you again soon.